Welcome back to our Bible story series as we continue to take you through a journey through the Bible in story form, making it come to life, making it simple, real, and just seeing how the lessons from it can apply to our day-to-day life. Now, last week we were again following the story of this amazing guy called Abraham, and there was an interesting twist in his story where this guy ended up sinning by lying because of how beautiful his wife is, and the fear. Imagine your wife's beauty being what causes you to fear and leads to sin. But anyway, that story went on, and you can watch that video, and he gets kicked out of Egypt. And so we're with him in this story, and I think what's blowing me away, just as I even learn from these Bible stories myself, is just how life has an up and down even in our walk with God. And you see that with Abraham. You see this man have immense faith and live his home, and then moments of lack of faith and trust in God and end up sinning. And then today again we just see something so amazing in his character. And for me, one, it's an encouragement that even as you and I go through our lives, as we go through the ups and downs in our walk with God, that does not mean we failed in our walk with God. But anyway, that's a side note. Let's go on with our story. So Abraham gets kicked out of Egypt. He's back towards the land of Canaan. Him and his whole household, plus his nephew and his nephew's household, settle in this valley in Canaan. So, something interesting in the story again. The Bible mentions that this guy was so wealthy that his possessions and his livestock, then his nephew's possessions and livestock could not fit in this area. Now, the reason why I think that's so cool is because so many times the perception we have is that the Bible and everyone who followed God and everyone who was a servant of God was a sufferer and a pauper. But that's not the case. And so again, I think this Abraham's story encourages us on many things. One, that even people who God has blessed with such amount of wealth can still serve God so faithfully. So they're in this valley, and these guys own so much. In fact, in the next chapter, you see a part where Abraham has an army of over 300 men who fight for him. Now, by the time that's your defense force, imagine what you own. And so there was conflict between Lot and his herdsmen, the people who took care of his cattle, and then Abraham and his herdsmen, because the land just was not enough. Their cattle kept multiplying, their cattle were too many, they needed food, and the land was not enough. So this conflict resolution meeting happens, and Abraham sits down with Lot. Now, if this was any other place, like where we come from here in Africa, Abraham being the older one, the uncle, being the wealthier one, this story would have gone in a certain way. Young man, time has arrived, your things are now causing conflict, your cattle are causing conflict, your people are fighting with my people, I think it's time that you relocate and find somewhere else to settle. I mean, that would have been the obvious conversation. But right there we see something amazing about Abraham's character and the fact that he was genuinely walking with God. Abraham calls Lot and he tells him, I don't want us to fight. So he already comes from such a point of humility. Since when does a wealthier, older person come with such humility towards someone younger than him? And he says, I don't want us to fight. And I want us to discuss who will take which part of the land so that we both can settle peacefully. And whatever you choose, I will be okay with. Abraham doesn't come with solution, doesn't come telling him what to do. He allows Lot to choose and says, even if you choose the better option or what looks like the better option, I will be at peace with it because I want us to have peace between us. I think that's just amazing. It's just amazing to see how when someone genuinely walks with God, even for you and I, our character gets formed and molded. But I think it's a rebuke also for you and I, because the more we grow in our positions, the more we grow in our status, in our possessions, in our wealth, in work and career, I wonder whether we still show such godlike characters of humility, of peace, of conflict resolution, of being so down to earth. And I believe this could only happen for Abraham because he was secure in God. He was secure in knowing God has promised me the inheritance of my land. So it has nothing to do with my status. And so I'm not approaching this conflict with Lot with insecurity over wondering what will happen to my wealth. If God chooses, he'll give me. If Lot chooses a better, God will find somewhere to settle me. He's got that covered. So he comes with humility because there's nothing to fight for. So the meeting happens and Lot logically chooses the better side of the land. On the east, it looked green, it looked amazing. was the best piece of land. And so he and his whole people moved towards that side. Now, on a side note, it's interesting to see that this is where Lot landed is technically Sodom and Gomorrah, and we all know how that story ends. And so it's just one of those for the grass is not always greener to do. Anyway, Abraham goes to the side that was not as green, as good, and God reminds and affirms Abraham in his choice and tells him, look, everything you can see, in fact, take a walk and walk as far as you will reach. Everything you can see, it's almost like that Lion King moment for as far as the sun touches. Anyway, everything you can see will be the land I will give to your people. It'll be your inheritance for your descendants. I will settle them in this place. And I think it's just a reminder that when we follow God's character, when we allow him to mold us, then we eventually in our decisions will land in God's will. The land that Abraham ended up in because he followed God's character, he didn't operate in greed, ended up being the very land that God was promising to him and his descendants. If he had chosen based on greed, based on his status, on his position, he would have ended up where Lot ended up, which was not what God's will and plan for his life was. And that's just an amazing lesson for us. I mean, Abraham's humility goes so far that if you go to the next chapter, Lot in Sodom and Gomorrah gets caught up in a war that was happening between multiple nations that were in Sodom and Gomorrah, and his whole family gets captured by one of the nations that was in that war. And Abraham masters his 300 plus army, and they go and they free him and they conquer those people and free Lot and all their possessions and allow them to settle again peacefully. That's how amazing his character was and his walk with God. That he not only didn't hold it against Lot for the choice Lot made, the better choice. He went and he freed him, and he always had his back. And we'll continue to see how that story unfolds. And I think this is just another vital lesson for you and I. Till next time, catch you later.